Hi, my name is Isaiah Orland. I'm the founder of Higher Frequencies, an entrepreneur, an executive, a lawyer, a physical fitness enthusiast, and a seeker of enlightenment and higher frequencies. Higher Frequencies is a community platform based on the pillars of spiritual enlightenment, wellness, music, and travel. Our mantra: discipline our senses to purify our mind, body, and soul through our spiritual practice, physical fitness routine, nutritional behavior, and relationship with self and others, hopes to provide guidance in our community's quest in reaching higher frequencies and moving closer and closer toward enlightenment. Each episode, we will bring you thought leaders from various sectors of business, nutrition, physical fitness, travel, music, and spirituality to discuss their stories and the modalities of discipline they lean into to reach higher frequencies. Our guest today, Lauren Salgado, is a lifelong seeker of mysteries dedicated to serving the great work. From the age of 3, Lauren, a natural born psychic medium, vividly recalls her first encounter with an angel. This profound experience left an indelible mark, leading her to vow, "I will never regret a day of my life again." Harnessing her gift, she conducted numerous readings over the years. Recognizing the potential to reach a broader audience, she made the decision to offer her abilities professionally. As a psychic arts practitioner, certified breathwork facilitator, and yoga instructor, with over a decade of experience, she has empowered countless individuals to transform their lives. Passionate about unveiling true potential and fostering joy and purpose, Lauren believes in everyone's ability to shape their desired life and equips them with the tools of positive change. Her commitment extends to guiding clients towards balance, harmony, and inner peace. Beyond her spiritual pursuits, Lauren boasts over 17 years of experience in the entertainment industry, managing both emerging talent and industry veterans. She directed high profile events on the Las Vegas Strip. Her vibrant enthusiasm for people stems from her extensive global travels and work in entertainment. Originating from New Orleans, Lauren's journey includes ballet training with esteemed institutions like the Bolshoi Ballet, the Rock School of PA, and the North Carolina School of the Arts. A former performer in Ballet's Las Vegas show Jubilee, she graced the Las Vegas Strip billboard for a decade. Transitioning her ballet skills into yoga, Lauren has become a recognized figure in the Las Vegas yoga community. Alongside her spiritual and professional pursuits, she embraces the role of a mother of 2 boys, Maddox and Phoenix, and their canine companion, Wallace. Our topic today: accessing higher frequencies, modalities of spiritual practice, physical fitness that aid in our journey toward enlightenment. Welcome, Lauren.
Thank you very much. That was a wonderful welcome.
I'll appreciate you. So I want to jump right in. And I know I gave a bunch of your background already to the audience, but how did your journey personally really start at 3 towards your journey of enlightenment?
Well, I think it really started with ballet. Like my mom put me in ballet when I was 2 years old. And so there was body awareness. And they would constantly say, listen to your body, listen to your body. And so with that active listening, and I wanted to do it so intensely, I started to listen to spirits and really connect to entities and other realms, and I could feel everything everywhere. So very intensely.
Okay. Do you think that had something to do with like understanding breath in ballet?
Oh, 1,000%.
Mm.
Yep.
And what makes you, from that point, what made you get to this point of wanting to aid others on their journey toward enlightenment?
Well, I've always felt called to serve. Growing up in like elementary school, I would volunteer and help the handicapped children with their recess and lunch. And I went to Catholic schools, and so we did a lot of community service. And so I always felt like I wanted to serve the community, and I knew that that was something that I had to do.
Gotcha. Gotcha. How would you define enlightenment?
Dissolving of the ego.
What does that mean? Expand on
And
that.
well, it's like this constant burn of who I think I am.
Okay. So the burn, and we're going to get to that a little later in the episode, but they say the burn is the blessing, or
Hmm.
tapas in yoga. Can you expand on that a little bit now?
I mean, that's like the most challenging. I knew I was super psychic, right? I knew I had this. And then as you move through life, you get messaging from your community, from school, from teachers. And I realized that I was like tapping into something that everybody else wasn't. And so I ran away from that. I tried to run away from it many times and hide it and not be it and deny it. And, so I created, what I thought I was supposed to be. And that has been that burned to the ground.
Yeah, no,
That idea of self.
I could definitely relate to that. I mean, I always say, people, you have to step into the fire to burn off your austerities, right? That's what the
Hmm.
great sages say. And at a young age, myself, growing up in New York, being born into a psychic household, but being in New York City public school, and at the same time meeting with the likes of Guru Maya, with the Siddha Yoga sect, or Rabbi Gelberman with the Kabbalah Institute, it can be overwhelming for a young person to be introduced to the spirit world and then have to walk into the public school system or the system where you're just trying not to be possibly bullied or be labeled an outcast.
Which still happens. I still walk into parties and there'll be somebody there that wants to torch me. They literally are like, I am skeptical of you. I don't believe in anything that you do, And so there's still this courage that I have to stand up and be authentic and, claim it.
Do you think that has to do possibly with a person's soul's progression and where they're at their journey in this incarnation?
Sure. Yeah. Everybody's on their own timeline. But I think that if they're in front of me, then they're probably ready to ascend in some way.
Right. We're going to get to
Mhm.
medicine talk a little later too, but I always tell people if you're asking me about something like ayahuasca or 5-MeO DMT, it's probably because it's time for you to try it.
Right.
Right.
Yes. Right.
Otherwise,
Exactly. The invitation.
right, it wouldn't come up in conversation. So we spoke a little about spirituality, and before we get into the focus of the show, um, do you feel your physical, obviously being a ballet performer and being a yoga teacher, how do you feel the physical aspect of well-being plays into your spirituality?
I mean, your body is a vessel, and, body vitality is spirit vitality. And so I think they are synonymous with each other. And, we have these energy centers in our body, and they can get clogged up with information and energy and emotions. And we need that physical practice to disperse the energy to transmute it.
And when you say the energy centers, you're specifically speaking of our chakras, correct? For the audience.
Chakras, nadis, yeah.
Not right. Okay. And just for our audience, your chakras, think of them as your energy organs. Think of your nadis as the things that carry the energy throughout your body. So your arteries and veins would be similar, right?
Hmm.
So what Lauren's discussing here is the fact that, these get clogged with the interactions we have during the day and the energy, and they need to be cleared out through breath and through work. And I always tell people, like, oh, the 7 chakras. I said, there's more like 114.
Yeah.
And there's about 72,000 energy cycles and nadis. And, there are 108 nadis that go from your heart chakra to your 6 main chakras, let's call it. But those are just the primaries, like your primary organs. So just a little more insight there that people could dig into. So I want to focus with you on some modalities, as we discussed, that focused on spiritual practice and physical fitness, specifically meditation, yoga, breathwork, tarot, which you are
Hmm.
very well schooled in, psychedelics, scry, which I'm excited to learn about, just
Hmm.
giving the audience an overview, and then how important the integration of all this is and what that actually means, right? Because whether you're going to do a yoga class, you're going to work with medicine, your intention going in and the integration going out, I always say, is just as important, not more as important than the actual activity in between,
Hmm.
right? And people forget that. But let's start with meditation as like that's the overview of the all. So, people speak about guided meditation, sound meditation, mantra, breath work, yoga. Like, how do you define meditation versus the sector or type of meditation we're talking about?
Well, for me, it's like the most like glorious, loving chocolate cake connection to source that I can't wait to do every single day. And that I just feel this oneness and this connection to the divine and healing and letting go.
We had this conversation when we were doing this pre-interview when I said, because we've used the word source and divine, and I said,
Hmm.
well, Hashem, witness consciousness, Christ consciousness, divinity. I'm a spirit having a human experience. Maybe dive a little deeper into what source is and how you view it.
Well, source is, well, for me, it's like light, right? Like, so light carries information and darkness is lack of information. And Source is like, it's like, well, it's love. It's like love, information, light, God. You can call it oneness with all.
Right. I mean, many people believe like the true religion is love, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
Jesus's religion was love. Like
Mm-hmm.
that is, although enlightenment is a higher frequency per se, love is the actual frequency that they say will unite the 5D.
Well, like authenticity, right?
Right.
The more authentic you are, the higher the vibration.
Right. And if you're stuck, back to what we were talking about before, if you're really stuck in your ego, it's really hard to be your authentic self.
The ego identification with the role that you play.
Right. How do you break away from that though through meditation? How does meditation help you disassociate from your ego?
Well, it's mindfulness. It's awareness. It's
Right.
it's a state of awareness. And the more aware you are, the more you can tap into your inner resources of, intelligence, creativity, love. So we use it to look at ourselves.
So I get this comment a lot, like, Isaiah, you were brought up in a metaphysical household. You started chanting before you could walk, right? When you have a client come to you that's never really meditated per se, what do you suggest? How do you start them?
Well, I start them with breath. Like I start, if you're coming to me and you have a question or something that you want to know about your life, for me, the first energy I embody is feminine to receive. And so I have to receive your energy, and then the child, which I'm curious, and then the analytical masculine energy comes in and we kind of figure it out. And so with just a simple breath, so I'll cue them through parasympathetic breathing because that's the quickest way to shift the emotions. And that makes it easier for me to access them.
Can you give the audience a little overview of just what not the actual going through the process, but just a description of what parasympathetic breathing is and does for you?
Short inhale, long exhale.
Right.
And it activates the vagus nerve in the body, the healing nerve.
Okay.
So it calms your nerves.
Which is at the center, top of the chest.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you consider like box breathing a form of parasympathetic?
Yeah.
Right. So for the audience, they can look that up online. Box breathing generally is an intake exhale of a certain number of seconds, a hold for a certain number of seconds, an exhale for a certain number of seconds, and another hold, and repeat it over and over and
there's
over.
no like wrong way to do it. You just have to have the intention of wanting to do it. And you can do it for 2 minutes.
Right.
And you can be like, your eyes can be, as long as you're sitting there with the intention that eventually you're going to get somewhere.
Yeah. For like 2 years when I was living in California, I was going a lot to Lake Shrine and studying Kriya Yoga and learning about Yogananda past the autobiography book. And, he even said there's days that he couldn't stop his mind from racing. So I think the audience needs to understand that it's not, you don't just sit down and drop in. It's something that takes time, patience, and the willingness just to be the witness, but understand that there's still going to be noise.
Yeah, and your mind, it's your relationship to your thoughts. Like, do you believe what you think? Your thoughts can lie to you, they're very susceptible. So what is your relationship to the thoughts? And can you sit back and watch them?
Right. Your mind can create and it can also miscreate.
Your brain is a polarity organ and it sees duality and it's just the conductor. The heart is where I go, right?
Right.
Where we all go. Where, the first sign of the soul entering the body is the heartbeat. So that's where the soul lives. And so whenever I'm giving a reading, I always look into someone's head and I look into the heart because the heart speaks like a different language to me. And then I look at the way their thoughts are affecting how they perceive a situation and also their future.
Gotcha. I guess that means that, most of us, there's a moment there where I calcified my heart, I say, because of business, relationships. And I was like, and it manifested in physical pain, like around my shoulder.
It's so crazy. Like, cause I always say like the heart doesn't break, the ego breaks.
Correct.
And I say that all the time. And until you strain a pectoral muscle and it feels like someone slashed your heart and you're like, and I had that
That's
recently.
exactly what happened.
Yeah, I had that recently. And I was like, I looked up Louise Hay, How You Can Heal Your Body, I think is her book. And I was like, well, what's this pectoral? And it said a ruptured relationship. And I was like, oh.
Really?
Yeah. And that's what happened to me.
It was like in California, I was doing that for a year and I mentioned it to this yoga teacher and he's like, does anyone have any injuries? And I was like, yeah, it like hurts over here. He's like, you think that's physical?
I always think spiritual first for everything. I'm moving the energy through my body right now. And that's why I'm experiencing this pain. And then I just watch it closely and then let it go.
And that's interesting because like if you've read or if the audience has been informed like on Gabriel Mate's book The Myth of Normal or where the medical field is going right now, and even doctors like Sanjay Gupta, they're saying 90% of physical ailments start as traumas in the mind,
Hmm.
and then through inflammation and recessive gene traits we manifest those into we all carry recessive traits of cancer and this and that, but nobody wants to heal the mind right now because it's so easy to go to the doctor and get a pill for something,
Yeah, exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Which
And oftentimes we try to go, they'll try to give medication, but it's physiological. Like the breath, if you can change your breath, you can shift your emotions. That's the fastest.
yeah, and generally medicine is symptom based, right?
Right.
You're not, you know, for me personally, the last few years I've shied away from doctors and I've had my experiences with ayahuasca and 5-MeO, and for the physical ailments, I've turned to regenerative medicine, which is a burgeoning new field, unfortunately, mostly outside of the country right now, but
Yeah.
we'll get there. So what's your primary form of meditation? Is it mantra? Is it sound? Is it like what's your daily, do you have a daily routine with
I
meditation?
do. Well, it starts with making my bed. And my bed, you could bounce a corner off of it. Like it is, perfectly like no wrinkles and perfectly tucked and folded. And it starts there. Then I journal and I usually pull a tarot card and I do a lot of my meditations in the bathtub. So I put lots of salt in the bath. I light candles. I have a scrying mirror in the bathtub. And then, and usually like I read my chakras using the tarot almost every day. And then I find out which one is not, that needs, energy. And I will go online and I go on Insight Timer or, I look at these different programs and I just, search out a meditation. And then I do that just about every
Oh,
day.
so let's pause there for a sec. So you actually drop into where you're feeling. So rather than using a mantra, like I use 3 mantras every day, well, 4 now, every morning and every night, 108 times before my silent meditation.
Hmm.
108, as we mentioned, the number of nadis from your heart chakra, the number
Hmm.
of poses in yoga, very symbolic number in many cultures, specifically in the
My
yoga culture.
son was born January 8th. His name is Phoenix, and that was the year I became a teacher.
Oh wow! So there you get it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. January 17th, with it adds up to 8. So yeah.
Yeah.
So but I was saying, so I use mantras that have been given to me either through psychic abilities, through family, most recently through a medicine worker from Colombia, where we ended up not sitting with medicine, but I was still gifted a mantra. But what you're saying is there are some sites where if you're feeling energetically or if a chakra is off, you can actually look to find a mantra to use for that day.
Yes, and I will go to mantras. Like if my mind is super racy, like and I can't get it to calm down, I usually just go to so hum. Just go
Right.
straight into so hum.
Okay. Okay.
And especially breath work. Like so whenever I mean oftentimes when I start breath work, my mind just is like, okay, we're going to dump everything. And the way to like having that spiritual experience and my energetically for me is through the heart. And so like I've been in these like really active states and breath work or full body vibrations and seeing a white light and feeling connected to heaven. And I'm like thinking all kinds of thoughts. Like and then my knowing of needing the mantra, then I can go to the mantra and take it deeper and stay there longer.
Gotcha. And how does sound play into that, into your meditations?
Sound is like well, first it's like the narrator for like my experiences that I facilitate, right? Like the sound is the narrator.
Correct.
And sound has the ability to provoke emotions. So I use a cello player like in my breath work as well. And so, and I do listen to violins and strings. And that came through a meditation where I was asking my spirit guides, how do I revitalize my energy? And they said with strings. And so it's, violins, cellos, viola, and the cello makes the sound of the human voice, right? So it like has this ability to like bring up emotions, and obviously the 432 hertz, like the sound of the universe, and the human body resonating with that.
Yeah, I think, for 2 things there that came to mind. One was that I had extreme issues sleeping as a child, and they said classical music was what I needed to sleep with and was able to sleep. And it reminds me of what you're saying because of the cello and the strings really. And obviously the brand's called Higher Frequencies because it's based on the Salvagio frequencies and the map of consciousness and the understanding that we are all essentially energy
Mm-hmm.
vibrating into physicality, and that plants and everything we come in contact with carries a certain energy to it,
Mm-hmm.
which goes back to the beginning of our conversation. What we come into contact with has the ability to heal or pollute our energy structures,
Yep.
right? I think people don't really grasp that.
I mean, in Vegas, you know, we're like in the underworld, especially like the backgrounds where you and I come from.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, they treat going to bars like a Starbucks. So it's like,
Oh,
it's like,
the way I used to drink pre like ceremony work and like, I look, I always say this about Vegas is like things become normalized here that in other environments, you'd just be like, what is that person doing?
yeah.
But because you're not still like at the worst of the, not worst, because everyone's on their own journey, right? But the fact that I'd go out and put away a bottle of tequila or two a night, it's problematic in any other environment.
Well, the word alcohol comes from this fixed star, this name Algol, which means demon head. And so spiritually, there's certain substances that make you susceptible to lower level energy. And there's certain things that you take that shift your consciousness to a higher state. So if you've ever been confronted with a demon like I have, the crazy, you know, some crazy times working with clients, you know, walking, and especially the more and more I got into this work, walking into a bar was a different experience for me. You know, it could be
Overwhelming.
very overwhelming. I saw there was a couple times, like I recently was somewhere downtown and I just saw red. I was like, I just had to get out of there. And I was like,
Yeah.
my whole body like tensed up.
And look, spirits, they're called spirits for a reason. They open you up to spirits. I was in the alcohol business. I still have an admiration and respect for alcohol, so I'm not going to say that people should not drink. But I can say from my own personal experience with 5-MeO, when I was in Puerto Morales working with a very prominent medicine worker, he didn't know I was in the alcohol business. And he immediately after the first ceremony looked at me and he was like, you're around a lot of spirits. And I was like, yeah, like I'm a psychic sort of. And like, he's like, nah, you drank a lot of spirits in your time. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, how'd you know that? He's like, because you've opened yourself. There's so much energy that harbors itself in you from drinking that in people of a higher energy, the spirits will try to hide when they're trying to not cross over. The first time I'd been explained that in that manner, and that freaked me out a bit.
It's a little freaky.
Yeah, to think that
Well, and it's like I'm open to the experience.
Correct.
I'm always like, oh, okay, I'll have this experience. But then you're like always, you know, that's where yoga comes in, or whatever, the knowing of moderation, of like, you know, not taking it too far.
Yeah, look, and I still like I still consume alcohol. I like wine. I think it's art occasionally, and mezcal is, if I'm going to drink hard, because I do consider mezcal an ancestral medicine because of the way it's produced and its lineage, but nonetheless, it can still open you up for lower frequencies to enter your system. And it might not be you. It might be the fact that they're just not wanting to cross over.
Yeah, and usually there's a sympathetic vibration, so there's something.
Yeah.
And I've seen it with absolute certainty, you know, literally like on the phone with somebody and heard like a demonic voice come through and
Right.
confronted it.
Right.
As I would.
Right.
As as the dark night does, we go into the darkest places and confront the energy and then turn it into the light.
Yeah, and I was told at a young age that if spirit ever comes and manifests itself in front of you, that, you know, you can ask it to leave if it's not, and it has to, they're mischievous, right? You could say, hey, if this spirit is not of a positive energy, please leave. And if you're just too overwhelmed and it is of a positive energy, say, I'm just not ready for this right now. And I've had those experiences numerous times.
I get super curious. I'm like, why are you here? Where do you come from? You know,
right.
And what is your story? I learn its story and then send it to a place of unconditional love and light if it needs it. Sometimes it's an animal that shows up, you know?
Yeah, and sometimes it's there actually for your benefit as a guardian angel and, you know, just hanging out to take care of you.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's a good segue into, because you mentioned yoga, and that's how you and I met through a yoga class. I don't teach, but I'm certified, but you do teach. We met at a Soulful Sundays class, and I immediately, you know, recognized your ability to read and pick up on energy just by the things that you were saying and what was going on in my head in those classes, which I try to keep somewhat quiet. But many people hear the word yoga, and yoga obviously means to yoke and breath,
Mhm.
but they think it might only be movement, or it might, they're not really sure of that. So, how do you define yoga when you're talking to somebody?
Well, it is like mind, body, soul in one, right?
Correct.
So that's where, I mean, yoga for me is, I mean, it's a ritual. I mean, for me, it's the ritual and that I practice daily. And through that ritual, I become more aware of my path and who I am and where I need to be in life. Um, I started my first yoga class, I was like 12. My first like energy, learning about energy, I was like 10, and it was in a ballet intensive summer school. And they had us all sit in a circle and picture a ball of light around our hands and like create the ball, then put it over each other's heads and like around our body. And we learned about our energy and that we could like heal ourselves.
But this was in New Orleans, correct?
Yep, in New
Okay,
Orleans.
yeah. Just so, I mean, like, I've spent a lot of time in New Orleans, and it's a very intense energy area, so that's not what most people get to experience in their schooling.
And ghosts are like everywhere. I mean, no, we're talking about yoga, but like, I was just there like a couple weeks ago, and they have houses for sale in the Garden District with a
Yeah,
sign that says "not haunted."
yeah.
It's like we just grew up. It was like kind of a normal thing.
Yeah, look, and I grew up that way in New York as well, but I also want to define something for the audience here about ghosts, right? When you start getting in touch with your breath through meditation, through yoga, we all hear things in our head, not like psychotic, right? But
Hmm.
you think of a thought, you remember a person, and that's energy speaking to you, and it's associating with an image. So when we speak about ghosts, at least when I speak about ghosts, I'm not thinking about just the physical operation of an individual in a room or an entity. I'm thinking about the sound that I hear, the voice that I recognize, the family member that passed that's giving me guidance.
Hmm.
Or maybe someone not that I don't know, but I hear a voice and a name, and it can be, you know, I'll use my mother as an example because she's very good at this, or she is the psychic that brought me into the world. She'd be randomly in a department store when I was younger and would say to walk up to a random person and tell them that this one's thinking of them and this one's going to be okay. And it was, someone who's battling cancer, right? So some people, when they're just very connected to the other side, they hear things that it's not a physical operation, it's an energy.
Hmm.
Would you agree, disagree?
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
But no, I started my first class. I was like 12, and it was it was called Pelican Athletic Club in
Okay.
Louisiana, and I felt like at the end of the meditation, I felt the goodness. I felt I felt my soul, and I felt this like disintegration of myself,
Right.
like or the dissolving of myself, and I was like, whoa, what is that?
Right.
And then as a ballerina, you're kind of just like brainwashed into like you have to do ballet and that's it because that's what your body's used for. It's kind of like being an athlete, and they don't want you to like mess anything up.
My understanding is it's more physical demanding than being an athlete.
Yeah, well, yeah. Well, because you have to make it look good.
Right.
So it's like, you're going through these really intense, painful situations. A lot of, ballet is like not natural. Yoga
No.
is natural, right? I mean, so it's like they don't want you to mess up your turnout, mess up, certain things that you had worked on and developed within yourself. And so I practiced yoga after that. And then it wasn't until I was like 17, 18 that I really started to practice more and more.
Got you. And was that at that point vinyasa, ashtanga?
Ashtanga. It was
Okay.
Ashtanga first and then Vinyasa.
Okay.
And then my family moved to Vegas, and I ended up staying here and they left. And then that's where I found the hot yoga community here. And, Mark BT was my teacher here.
Okay.
And that's where like the major transformations
And
happen.
was that in like the Baptista
Hmm.
lineage? Okay. I know we're throwing out terms here that people might not understand, but we're talking more about a certain series of postures connected to breath that, if you think of your body as a master lock, is unlocking the energies. And Lauren and I was talking about this before the show. Sometimes in yoga classes, it's great for yoga teachers to be creative, but when you teach out of sequence, it could also be very jarring.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So, and then are there any other yogas such as like Kriya or Asita that you got into?
Um, No, it was just the yin. I mean, it kind of like developed over time.
Right. Right. Makes
Yeah.
sense. Um,
And then I
so
created like my own thing.
yeah, and I've taken your classes, and Lauren's not one of. I'm not criticizing. I pass no judgment, but Lauren's class flows. It's you leave where you're disconnected from your five sensors, and there's an energy spectrum there, which is what the goal for me is when I go to yoga. It's for me to disassociate my mind from my senses and stop looking externally for pleasure from things that are coming in my life, pleasure, and also stop feeling pain and causing suffering from what I might be dealing with in a business situation or in a personal situation. And that to me is the yoga practice.
And I think like I had a student just the other week and she said, "You have the gift of choreography." And I was like, God, no one has said choreography to me in a long time. Like it's like sequencing, but it's like the combination of everything that I do with energy. And I have the cards and even the classes I don't use the cards in. I'm finding like dynamic ways that you can move your body and free yourself.
Right, right. And that clearly comes from your ballet background.
And
So,
some teachers,
and some
you know.
teachers. Yeah, of course. I
I'm a
mean,
product of my teachers too,
of
you
course,
know.
and also of taking there's some classes that are just it's super intense, but I still go, not because because it's part of the goal is to challenge yourself, right?
Yeah.
If I can be in control of my breath throughout the class, it's probably not the right class because the goal is to push myself where I have to really control my breath.
Mm-hmm.
Like I got that way the other day in Mark's class. I was like, my goodness, like I'm getting anxiety and like,
Yeah. I'm like, death of the ego,
yeah,
like walking in there. It's like,
yeah,
he has that ability
yeah,
to kind of, and I always had, even in ballet, I had these really strong, like male teachers.
yeah.
I mean, there's a few female, Kathy Lee,
Hmm.
she was my teacher too.
Oh wow.
And, and they pushed me, you know, and to becoming a yoga teacher wasn't to be a teacher. Like I didn't willingly do any of this. I wanted to be everything but that,
Right,
and even
right,
in the training, I didn't really even speak out loud that much. And I tried to like kind of hide because I was like, I really just wanted to, I mean, he kind of was like, pushed me into doing it. And he's like, Lauren, he had been my teacher for over 10
oh
years,
wow.
And so, and he had told me many times that I needed to be a teacher. And I was like, I'm not a teacher. And I'm like, I'm not doing this to be a teacher. And I think I still go into the room like that. Like I still go into the room like, this is your class and I'm holding space for authenticity. And in my radical authenticity, that's creating a space for you. And I'm the teacher.
That's beautiful.
You can do what you want.
So and I don't want to go too far deep into the yamas and the
Oh
niyamas,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
but we touched on tapas, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the namas and the niyamas, I look at them as there's the 8 limbs of yoga, which come from the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, which are sort of like the gospel of yoga, let's say in a manner.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have
Like a
these
lifestyle guide.
lifestyle guide, and then you have the observances and restraints. And I always tell people they're sort of like the purer version of the 10 Commandments,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because they are pretty much, if you look at them. And if you look at Jesus Christ was actually, they say in those 32 missing years, he was studying the Vedas in India and all of these similarities between Hinduism and Judaism. But if we were to focus on one today, what are you feeling like teaching or telling the audience about when it comes to yamas and niyamas?
Well, I know I was really thinking about this because like I read the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali like probably 20 years ago,
Right.
and when I was looking at them again, I'm like, I basically am doing this every day, all of them.
Correct.
They just become kind of a part of
You
you.
fully incorporated them.
I mean, truthfulness,
Right.
you
Which is
know.
something we all need to like. It's interesting you bring that up because in my business relationships and personal relationships, I've been trying to understand how to speak my truth without passing judgment on someone else. Right. Which is a really hard thing, especially with what's going on in politics right now, because I'm not here to pass judgment. I'm here to show up with love and not
Mhm.
respond to my trauma or your trauma in our situation. But in speaking my truth, like that can be difficult.
Well, and I have had hundreds of thousands of opportunities with my readings to be able to try to figure out how to do that, right?
Right.
In the beginning, maybe I was not articulating, I wasn't communicating in a way where, I mean, it was my truth, but just like you said, the judgment was like coming in.
Correct.
And so what's interesting is that I'm looking for me to give a reading or even to channel anything, I go to like this zero place, you know, and I might talk about a fact like this is situation is this, but they may judge me saying it. Their judgment comes out.
But that's their trauma.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm like, let's take it a step back. But also like, I mean, well, celibacy, you know, that's something that I'm practicing.
Yeah. I just went through an 9 month. Yeah. 9 month strain of it, not strain of it. Do you call it that? But in a lot of the, I talk openly about that, and I'm in a relationship now that, celibacy in a lot of the great arts is a part of the practice of spiritual enlightenment. But from a male perspective in society today, we've gotten so adjusted to wanting to like prove our manhood through it, right? Through not practicing it. But our sexual energy is actually our energy. So when we share that with someone, we can either raise our vibration or completely deplete our energy spectrums.
And especially like as a female, there's oxytocin, right?
Correct.
So that is going to happen no matter what.
Right.
So,
right.
And then you become addicted to it. And that's where they get into these situations where.
It's interesting though. You have celebrities more like Lenny Kravitz talking about it. And there was another very famous R&B singer that was talking about it. So it's becoming more of an open conversation where I felt it was very, like growing up in New York, that was a taboo thing to talk about. Or even going to school, you know, working in nightlife in Miami. Like, what do you mean? Like from a man's perspective, there's these beautiful women all around, you know? So that was, I think, a good overview on like yoga and energy. Another modality that I got to experience with you through one of your classes, which I had done before, is holotropic breathwork. So we spoke about parasympathetic breathwork, right? To calm your nervous system. But holotropic breathwork is something so very different. Maybe give the audience a little overview on that.
Well, when you change your pattern of breathing, you shift your consciousness. And the way that I started doing, I always did breathwork, and I was taking breathwork classes of all different types in town. But breathwork came to me. It wasn't like I studied it and I was like, I'm going to be a teacher now. It was like I literally was pulled into this situation, and I had just been in the jungle in Mexico. I had done a bufo ceremony in the jungle, realized I'm supposed to be in Vegas, which was like something I was always struggling with. Like, why am I here? Why don't I resonate with like Bali or something? And
well, there's a huge spiritual awakening going on here. And this is where where you could help the most people, I think.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
That's okay. So I had been in the jungle, and then I came back to Vegas. And so the integration, I immediately went into readings. And so the integration of bufo kind of like was breath work that came into my life. I had a friend that was here from New York working a convention, and she at the convention was frequency breath work, and they had a booth in the middle of the convention. It was like a big dome. And she said, as soon as I got to the convention to visit her, she's like pulled my arm into this booth, and she goes, "You need to work for these people." And I was like, "What is it?" And she's like, just you need to talk to them. And so I was like, grabbed a little flyer, and I was going to leave. And she's like, no, you need to go in there and you need to go do this. And so I went in the dome, and we started breathing, and we started to breathe. Holotropic breath work is done through the mouth, into the belly, into the heart. And it's this rhythm of breathing that shifts your energy, your consciousness. And I started to have like a full on, like the same experience as bufo started to happen to me in breath work. And I was like, completely sober. I was like, what is happening? And I kind of held back a little bit in that session. And I was like, when are you guys doing this again? And they were like, well, we're going to do one on the roof of Area 15 on Sunday. Can you join us? And I was like, sure. And gave him my card. And then I get to the roof of Area 15 on that Sunday, and there's like 20 of us there, and it's cold. And it was December 12th, 2021. And we're on the roof, and we're all huddled together, and we're doing this breath work. And there's a part where you do a primal scream.
Yeah.
And as soon as I did the primal scream, my everything dissolved and disintegrated into nothing.
Yeah, I can relate. I've done 5-MeO as you have Bufo, so I know what that feeling is of crossing over. I get it sometimes even now during yoga,
Hmm.
but I had done a holotropic, and for the audience, holotropic breathwork was created by Stan Grof and his wife. He's a Czech Hungarian doctor who is one of the foremost experts in LSD. And when LSD was made illegal, they still wanted to figure out a way to help people cross their consciousness. And they noticed there was a rhythmic pattern going on in the breathing when people would be in LSD experiences. And I don't want to call them trips because that's derogatory in my opinion. Um, and they worked with tens of thousands of patients to get to a point where what Lauren was speaking about, what is the cadence of breath to induce this? And I will say from my personal experience, the first time I did it, it freaked me out. It
Hmm.
freaked me out more than 5-MeO. And I'll say, and we'll get to what 5-MeO is in a minute, but it freaked me out more than 5-MeO because you're throttling how you cross. And I was like, oh, like with medicine, when you do ayahuasca or 5-MeO, it's like, hey, the medicine's going to do what it's going to do. But this, I was like, am I going to die? Like, what's going to
That's
happen?
exactly what I thought.
Yeah. I
It
was
literally, I was like, am I dying right now? And should I
yeah,
keep doing this? I
that's
was
what I
like,
thought.
and so that's where my cards came in and my handy little cards. And at this point, I mean, I have proof, right? I've worked on detective cases and cold cases, and a lawyer will come in with a group of witnesses, and I'm finding evidence, and the investigative part of being a psychic, like I have absolute proof that I'm reading energy and that I can go into spaces and people and all this stuff. So I trust it. I trust my relationship with the cards, with spirit, working through them. And I had that moment sitting on my bed where I was like, so am I going to die if I keep doing this? And I
Right.
pulled the cards out and I got the Ace of Cups. I was like, what is this? Ace of Cups. It's like the
What does that
holy
mean?
grail of
Okay.
spiritual enlightenment.
Got you. Yeah. I mean, I was in Colombia. It was a 3-hour session. And he said, you're gonna breathe in the first hour. You're gonna have points where you need to stop, and then he's like, "Oh, and then the last 90 minutes, you'll just be in a full psychedelic experience." I'm like, "From breath? I mean, come on, man!" Like, I was a little skeptical, even though I have friends who in the psychedelic community who are very prominent practitioners, but I was always a little skeptical. But I can say that it ultimately is all breath from that experience.
And if your body is dense,
Yeah,
and your
yeah.
mind is, everything is dense, it's like you may just suffer through that entire experience.
But back
Like,
to the frequency aspect of it, the music plays such a vital
oh
role,
yeah.
and I am not trained in it, but my understanding is that if you are trained, there's music that gets passed around from various tribal communities that is at the right cadence. There's a certain like cadence to be followed in terms of when you're breathing heavily. So it's very interesting there is a science
Well, the
behind it.
drumming.
The drumming,
Hmm.
yeah,
The
yeah,
drumming will shift you.
correct. I can't.
So I also meditated with a light, the ajna light.
What's that?
That's a psychedelic. That's really like where it started for me when I started meditating under this light. And my friend had it at her house, and I meditated on it sober, and then I meditated under a mushroom under
Okay.
it. And under the mushroom, it's called an ajna light, and it just is like this little device, and it has a flickering light on the top, and you close your eyes and you go into these deep states of consciousness. She measured my brain waves while I was doing it.
So it's hitting like the back of your eyelid and creating a cadence to that.
Yeah, I have like a picture of it I could show you, but it's like well, now they have an app called Illuminate,
Uh huh.
which is like you can do it on your phone, and I like hook it on my bed, and it's not the same as the light. But so the first time I did it, I felt peace. Like it was similar to like the DMT activation.
Yeah.
But I felt like this veil of peace for like about a week over me after meditating under the light. The next time I did it with the mushroom, that's when I saw the Eye of Horus. I saw a hawk king sitting on a throne with Egyptian pyramids, and he was neon blue. I saw my guide that I've seen many times sitting next to me where I thought she was sitting next to me. I talked to the light. I talked to this light that was telling me about me and my son. It was absolutely incredible.
Man, it sounds wild.
And well, you're under the light and you're like, is this light making me see ancient Egypt? Like, why am I seeing Egypt? Which I had dreams. So I've always had like, I knew my past lives when I was younger, you know, like I knew I had some kind of Egyptian past life.
Right.
I was obsessed with Egypt as like a 6-year-old and would write in hieroglyphics and was like super into it. And then, you know, and then I have a spirit guide that comes to me in my dreams all the time. And I've learned that that's dream bridging. And he's given me things. He gave me this arrowhead in a dream and told me he was my teacher.
That's wonderful.
He's given me a stick with like a little red feather on it. And, you know, so I saw some of these people when I was under,
Yeah.
you know, and then the next time I did it, I saw white and the
Gotcha.
body vibrations happened.
Okay. Well, that's the light of enlightenment.
Mm-hmm.
So let's
I thought it was the setting
yeah.
of the light.
Right. Oh no.
I was like,
I mean,
what was that setting? Like, how did that? I've had other
look,
ones.
when you're already cleared and you do, and this can bridge our conversation into this next topic of really like the tools, tarot and psychedelics versus the integration of the messaging, right? That those things are tools versus integration, right? But what I was going to say about the light, it's like, if you're a spiritual person and a clear being and you do, 5-MeO DMT, which is bufo, and that's from a bullfrog, a Sonoran bullfrog. And what happens is you smoke this poison and you essentially cross for 20 minutes. It's a very intense experience. They call it ego death. But, and it's DMT in most of these is found. That's what the root cause of it is, which is also in ayahuasca and some other things, natural DMT. DMT is known as the spirit molecule, which when we're born and die, our body actually manufactures DMT in the back of our head. And that's how we cross. So you cross, and I know personally for me, the first time I did DMT, like I just shot right into white light. And it was very intense, but then it was like sort of like a magic carpet ride. I don't know how to explain it other than that,
Yeah.
But then you open your eyes and like the world looks different, right? So you mentioned psilocybin. We've mentioned 5-MeO and ayahuasca and these various other psychedelics, LSD.
Yeah, I've never done Aya, but I've had dreams about Aya.
Yeah.
I've had dreams, and the first dream I had, the next day I met a shaman, an ayahuasca shaman.
She's intense. Like she's not like,
yeah.
People are like, oh,
well, that's why I'm like the right time is going to come where this is, where I'm going to do this. And I'm not going to like, just go jump on that.
I have friends
I already feel her
who have done hundreds of ceremonies. Right. And I've done 12 since 2016, the first 4 being in the jungle in Peru. Man, there's a lot to unpack. Personally, I don't understand how you can go back to that medicine if you're not of the lineage so many times so fastly, but it's not my place to judge. For me personally, it'll be a year or 2 years between each sitting. And sometimes, like I'm in a point now where I don't know if I need her, but when she calls, I do want to experience it again. But I think with all of this, the integration gets lost on a lot of people. Maybe speak to that when we say integration, because it's a word that's thrown around both when you read cards, when you do medicine. Speak to like how you see integration.
I mean, I give people tools of like to me, like I just think of like connecting every single day after, and like understanding like your life is going to be different. Your relationships are going to change. Your environment's probably going to change. There's a lot of people who, including myself, that didn't have integration. And it was very, it was almost like sad, like after.
I always tell people when people ask me, I always say it's a disassociation from people, places, things, behaviors, and habits that don't serve you.
That's beautiful.
And it's beautiful.
It's a great way to describe it.
But it's isolating, lonely.
Yes.
And can be depressing, right? Because like, okay, what if you have to remove your favorite person? What if you have to remove your favorite food? What if you have to remove your way of thinking? And at the beginning of the conversation, we spoke about the burn is the blessing, right? And that's what that is, right? It's being willing to sit in that fire, right? So...
Well, and that's why like my ancestors that have come to me in my dreams and Native culture, like I had this one Native American come to me, and I think he is my ancestor. And there are some like blank spots in my history where, with my family that I need to figure out because I think I am related to him. But it was through years of having dreams that then I decided to study The Sacred Path by Jamie Sands. He has like these cards through cards.
Okay.
And I started to learn the discovery of self through native teachings and the path of the arrow. Like the dream I had about finding an arrowhead. I found an arrowhead outside by a train track. And then this Native American's face came through and said, I am your teacher. And I was like, okay, I guess I should learn about Native culture,
Right.
because that was very profound. And I found these cards in this book. And I don't like when I get a deck of cards, I don't like just pull every single one of them and learn about them. I just pull one at a time and I sit with it for a long time. And I only got Council Fire. And I had two, Council Fire and Vision Quest for a few months. I ended up finding an arrowhead and then I had it made into fine jewelry so that I could wear all the time. And I was getting ready to pick up my necklace and I took a mushroom. This was a couple of years ago. And I was like, what does my tribe want to tell me now? And I pulled the arrow and I started bawling my eyes out. I didn't even know there was an arrow card in the deck.
Yeah.
I mean, and it said that the path of the arrow is straight and narrow and aims at the heart. And the heart of every chief is the compassion of the tribe. And it's using total truth as protection. And anyone who's not on that path of total truth, you don't be bothered by it.
Yeah. I think yeah. And mushrooms keep coming up. Psilocybin to me, first of all, fungus is mushrooms are the interconnectivity. It's like the veins of the earth. Yeah.
Mhm.
But I think if people really understood the power of psilocybin, we wouldn't have SSRIs, Xanax. It really, at a certain age, I think it's, 20 or something, our neuroplasticity stops firing in our head. And from a scientific, I'm not a scientist, but from a scientific standpoint, psilocybin as well as DMT allows for neuroplasticity to occur. So you can relearn behaviors and things that in a more beneficial way compared to you might be your teenage years. You mentioned decks though. Let's go back to that, right, for one sec. Because we've thrown around the word tarot and you do tarot cards. Are all of these decks tarot decks, or is tarot one specific form of a deck and there are other decks for other?
So tarot started as a game in Italy.
Okay.
In the 15th century.
Okay.
So divination tools have been used since like 800 AD. And so there's like been, pendulums and actually my psychic journey. I mean, I have like such a crazy history, but like psychometry, I could hold an object and pick up information and things. I learned the tarot. So there are tarot readers all over New Orleans. And you go to the, the French market in New Orleans and you're going to, 20 years ago, and you're going to see a lot of like alternative like crystals with like eagle claws and like pendulums and the occult is like around there.
Right.
So I was like,
is that Wiccan? Is that attached?
Yeah, well there's some Wiccan, there's voodoo.
Got you.
There's all kinds of different things going on down there. But I got tarot. I was first introduced to tarot and intrigued by it actually to learn myself. And a lot of people will say that you can't read yourself. But I was like, I'm a psychic and I can read for so many people. How do I wanted to communicate more with spirit. And I was like, how do I do this? And that's where tarot cards came into my life. And, it was a game in Italy and it's I'm going to maybe butcher it. It's Italian, but it's like Tarocchi, I think.
Okay.
And so it was used as a game, and then in the 17th century, it started to be used. They realized that the pictures and images go back to Egypt, Freemasonry. There was all kinds of occult symbolism on all the pictures, and they started to use it as a divination. And then in the 18th century, from then on, it was always used as a divination.
Got you. So I mean,
so the images are 15th century.
It seems like
tarot.
we are the spiritual beings, right?
Oh yeah.
But all of these external things, whether it be tarot, yoga, dice, psychedelic medicine, are like if we were a carpenter, our toolkit to build the house, right? And I think people lose fact of that. That's why when we say integration is really the work after you've built the house, how are you going to live in it now?
Yep.
Right? You have any other thoughts on integration?
I know we keep going back to integration
because I feel it's feel you have so many charlatans. Why I was so excited to have you on here is because you're not a charlatan, right? I picked on up that right away.
Mhm.
And there's so many people running around saying, I'm a spiritualist, I'm a light. Like, if you tell me you're a light worker, like, I'm like, for who? The devil? Like,
Yeah.
don't, like, you have to tell, you're a shaman of what lineage? What were you
Right,
born into? Like,
exactly. And,
don't,
like, people forget, like, where that word comes from
right,
and
right. And like for me, you said Native Americans, right? What people forget is like, or what I understand at least is whether it's the tribes that were indigenous in the crossing back in the Ice Age to the what we consider North America, or the Mayans or the Zapotecs as you move further south, or the Shipibo. These are the holders of the knowledge, and these are the holders of the tools, but more importantly, they're connected to spirit. They understand the earth, they understand the
Mhm.
connectivity to, wind, fire, rain, and how important Mother Earth is versus someone who's like fighting for climate change or saying they're a shaman or a light worker. Not that I don't have
I kind
patience
of
for
felt
it.
your energy just now as you were speaking.
In what manner?
I just felt this, like, light come over me.
Mhm.
Like, this, like, vibrations. I was like, "Oh, what's happening here? Something's going on." I mean, and I'm not, I have minerals in my water, but,
Yeah. Well, I
I
appreciate
can
that.
hold a mushroom and feel it,
Well, it's
without taking it.
right. There's a vibration to it, right?
Mhm.
There's a frequency to it. And
But tarot, but, like, back to tarot.
yeah,
So so the cards are just cards. That's
right.
it. That's all it is.
They're tools.
It's tools. You can read a deck of cards.
Yeah.
You can read, it doesn't matter. And especially, like, as a psychic, like, I could read, I can read this table. I can, like,
Right.
gaze into the table and I can start to tell you stuff. But the cards, the journey on the cards is the whole human experience. And it's the language. It's like tapping into a language of spirit. And I feel I'm a translator. So I'm just translating the message. And the way that I go about reading people and using them is through curiosity and desire, the desire to, and then being curious. So I've learned the questions to ask, and you take out any room for error, like should, could, would, good, bad, positive, negative. Like you take that out of it and approach it in a more scientific way. That's where it's mind blowing.
Yeah, and I always that's what I've been saying to people, like in my further studies of Judaism, Kriya Yoga, all this stuff. It's like there's no positive and negative. Whatever the energy wants to show up in your life is for your soul's correction. So take the lesson with a smile and keep moving forward, right?
Hmm.
Which I really feel great connectivity from me to like the Lakota tribe and some certain tribes that have come up in my ceremonies. But I'm not. I might have been a shaman in another life, but like
No, I barely call myself a
right,
teacher.
we're Jewish. Like maybe I'm a
You
Jewish
know,
mystic at best.
yeah.
So we're just about out of time. Do you have
Oh,
anything you wanna before I give a little summation here? Anything you wanna add that you'd like to share with the audience
um,
on their journey toward
oh,
enlightenment?
on their journey toward enlightenment.
Sorry.
I mean, lasting peace can only be found within. So it's really like cultivating the oneness within yourself and, and being open to spirit and other dimensions, other frequencies, and letting that in the white light, letting that into your
Yeah, I
life.
mean, it's what we talk about here, and it's what we study in our spirituality. Is that we're sort of currently a lot of people are victims to their sense telephones, and they're constantly, you mentioned celibacy or alcohol or whatever your thing is. We're constantly looking externally for validation and to make us smile when the energy is within us. If we turn within, we can do that on our own. That we are
Hmm.
the ultimate source of love and energy.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I always like to end these podcasts with some things that came up in my studies this week. So this week, there's two little things that came up. One was we must make sure to surround ourselves with the correct individuals who can aid us on our journey toward enlightenment. Here are 7 qualities to look for in those you allow to offer you guidance and be in your immediate circle. They have awareness that there is a higher power. They command respect on account of their integrity. They are unattached to their wealth. They are righteous. They are insightful. They are able to deduce new laws and ways of being, and they have a good reputation. And then lastly, we must remember when confronted by great stress in life, which you will be, we have two choices: contract into fear or expand into love.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you. I didn't say that quote, but I'm gonna use it.
Yeah.
It was actually I read it in John Mackey's book, who is the founder of Whole Foods, and
Cool.
the contract, not the first part, the second part. Lauren, thank you so much for your time. We could have talked probably for hours about this, and I hope the audience out there had got some great information on spirituality and has some routes to go research now.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you. And then if you want to reach me.
Yes. Oh, sorry about that. One other thing. How can the audience reach you should they want to partake in a class or a reading?
I mean, unfortunately, the number one way is Instagram, right? At Lauren.noelle, Noelle.salgado. Or you can contact me on my website, thewiseunicorn.com.
Amazing. I have a unicorn tattooed on my arm, so I get it.
It was a nickname. It was a
yeah,
nickname, and I turned it
yeah.
into my business.
It was something I was called previous to when I was more of the wild person on the strip back in the day. But all good. Anyway, thanks again for coming and joining us.
Thank you
And
for having me. I
yeah,
think this is amazing, and I'm grateful to, connect with your community like this, and I wish everybody the best.
appreciate you.